Hey guys, this is Dexter from the Offspring, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
It's an honor to finally get to talk to you. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been fortunate to talking to Noodles over at Paintbrushes, Punk Rock and Paintbrushes, and every time he would give me a quick little update on this exciting 10th album. And now I'm excited to get your perspective of this record because it's, a long time coming and there's been so much going on. So first of all, congrats on the new record, and talk to me a little bit about this album and the idea of initially scrapping it and starting all over again before we get to hear what we hear today.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be talking with you here today. It's been several years since our last record, and it wasn't supposed to be that long, but it felt like it wasn't done till it was done. We've been recording ever since the last one. We generally go in for a couple weeks at a time, and we do a lot of touring still when there was touring. And so it just kind of took until now. So I don't know if it was so much that a record was scrapped necessarily, but we just kind of kept on tweaking till we felt like we had a good batch of songs.
Back then, Noodles had told me that you were trying something different as far as like the writing process goes. You were writing in front of the mic. And I'm curious, did that new process kind of stay true throughout this new record? Or did you end up going back to your old ways of getting together as a band, writing, and then jumping into the studio?
Yeah. I mean, usually I'll write as much of a song as I can and just kind of go straight to a demo. Because when you finally start putting it down in a recording way, that's when you can kind of really hear how it's coming across and stuff. So, but sometimes you don't have a whole song together. You've got a little chunk of it. So rather than waiting till a song was done, sometimes we would come in and just start working at it. So in that sense, it was kind of trying to come up with stuff on the spot. And that's a different way of working. I mean, sometimes, all of a sudden with a couple guys in the room, stuff really starts going and working. In general, I feel like it's better to have as much of the song written as you can before coming in is usually better.
And doing that new way of kind of recording, how do you feel like the addition of or bringing Bob Rock back for this record, was that a new process for him as well? That you were basically writing in front of the mic, so to speak, or was this something that you kind of got from him initially?
Yeah, the thing that's different about working with Bob is he loves being part of the creative process from the very beginning. I would normally get my demos together and try to, like I said, have all the songs sort of hashed out. And I remember early on, he was like, well, I'd like to sit in there while you put the demo together. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be, programming a drum machine for 2 hours. It's not like there's nothing to listen to for a while, but he's like, well, I would still like that. So what's cool about that is that even as the demo's coming up, and I just want to give people it's almost like a sketch of the song. It's a blueprint. It's not necessarily the final version of it, but he'll start having ideas about it early on. And sometimes those ideas really help the final product. And it's kind of good that he gets right into the very seed, the beginning of a song.
Another cool thing that I saw is that, it seems like during this process of the initial process of the album, it seems like Bob Rock was a part of it since then and throughout this entire time. So usually when artists work with producers, they don't really have that whole period of time to be with the producer usually. So you had the opportunity to do that with him. So did he have, how did he help you guys create this record that it is today, and in a way that kind of challenged you to step out of your comfort zone?
Right. That's the job of a producer, right? For sure. And we've been working together for 3 albums. So some people say, oh, you've worked together 3 times. But like you said, he's been working with us in between the whole time. So I almost say it's more like 33 times because we generally don't. When you used to do an album, it's like, okay, we're going to block out the studio for 3 months or something and just knock it out. But I get kind of burned out recording that way. I think that you can't tell after you hear a song 100 times what needs to be better or how good it is. So we like to go maybe 10 days at a time and then kind of take a break. And usually we had tour dates anyway. And then you kind of listen to it fresh a couple of weeks later, and you can really tell much better what needs to be done on the song. So we record more in short bursts. So that's one thing that helps us is, gaining perspective, they would call it, I guess. Right. But the other thing that Bob does is he's really good about like saying like, if something needs to be done, or if it's not quite there yet, he'll say it in like a really nice way, like, oh, it's going to be great or something, in a way that kind of hints at that. And so I'll say, well, what do you think? What's the matter? What do you want to do? And he says, no, not what I want to do. Is what would the Offspring do? Like he throws it right back at you in a way that it challenges you. And it's kind of a funny question to ask, because you're like, well, we are the Offspring. This is what we do. But he's trying to get you to take yourself a step further, which it usually works out really good.
Did you find yourself kind of rediscovering yourself as an artist during the process of this record because you had the amount of time that you did?
I think that the writing changed direction a couple times is what happened. When you've put out a bunch of records like we have, I feel like I always want to try to expand what we're doing. I never want to feel like we're just repeating. Right. So, and I think on the last couple of records, Days Go By and stuff, we kind of did try to widen our circle musically of what we might touch on. And we were kind of going in that direction for a little bit. And then at some point in the middle of the recording, I decided I wanted to write songs that were more straightforward. I don't want to call them old Offspring, but that's what people always say. Oh, I like your old stuff, right? That's a very common thing. But I did feel like writing stuff that wasn't trying to be super different. I think, especially as time went on, it's been, years since we put out a record. We don't want to have a record that's like out of left field. We want it to be like the stuff that we feel like people are going to like.
As far as like instrumentation goes, did you find yourselves kind of recording or tracking instruments or even sounds in a different way that you hadn't done before with your previous Offspring records?
I'm trying to think of what's different. Guitar stuff is always changing. There's a lot of what they call digital modeling now. So some of the recorded tracks aren't even actually amps. They're just imitations of amps, but they sound really good now. So you kind of, for us, it was a mixture of some of that digital stuff and real live miking of instruments. So that was one thing that would be, I guess, a little bit different. Some of the songs just have different instrumentation. There's a couple of songs that have piano on them and some horns, and all that was kind of fun to dive into.
And adding like the horns, for example, how did that impact your vocal ranges and kind of how you delivered the songs on this record?
Well, I mean, each song kind of has its own vocal and its own style and its own where it sits note wise and stuff. That song, We Never Have Sex Anymore, it wasn't particularly high vocally. I think the trick with that is the horns have to get out of the way of the vocal, if you know what I mean. You don't necessarily want them all going on at the same time. If the horns are doing a lick, you want the vocal to be done, and vice versa. A
song like Behind Your Walls, like the introduction of that part of that song, you are singing at a lower register. So like that, how did that kind of writing process and the recording process kind of challenge you doing it in a lower register compared to the other material that you're used to singing?
Right. I mean, putting dynamics in music is important to us. So sometimes a good way to do that is, start low and then go high, right? And so that was just sort of the idea on that, is let's do the first verse a whole octave lower vocally and try to make it sound very present, like I'm right up on the mic, and a lot of that kind of compression to make it feel like your voice is right there, sitting right there out in front, to sort of exemplify the lyrics was kind of the idea. And then just to come in really hard and then go up an octave and just start jamming away.
As far as like you preserving your voice, just because I feel like within every producer that you get to work with, they challenge you to step out of your comfort zone more than you did before. So how do you preserve your voice over the years? And how did you feel challenged the most vocally on this record?
Well, preserving your voice is, part of it is just not using it too much, I guess. We try to make sure we don't do 10 nights in a row if we're playing for touring, for example, anymore. We try to limit it so that your voice doesn't get shot. Because once your voice gets hoarse, you can't just take one day off to recover. You need a few days in a row, which typically doesn't happen until the end of a tour. So you want to space it out, pace it so that you're not getting to that point where you're fried and you got these dates to go still. So that's part of it. I mean, this, as dumb as this sounds, warming up is actually really important. Just getting that going, getting your voice going. So before every show or before every recording session, we'll warm up for 20 to 30 minutes. And that's about it.
I feel like artists, over the years, they start to realize, oh, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. And then now they start to kind of like take care of their voice better, or the way that they should have been doing a while. Did you find yourself doing that over the years?
That happened a long time ago. I think right before Smash or during Smash, I was getting really hoarse a lot. So our producer at the time knew a vocal coach in Hollywood, a lovely lady named Gloria. And I went to her for about a year, I guess. And we worked through kind of warming up and how to, the breathing and stuff and some of that technique. I'm certainly no expert, and I didn't, it wasn't like something I did every day for 10 years. I just kind of got some help with her to get me through the what's the word? The toughness of touring.
Now, during the recording process or even the writing process of this album, what would you say was the most challenging song to finalize?
Oh, right. You were talking about that vocally. I'd have to say Gone Away. Gone Away is on this record. And of course, it's a song that we wrote a long time ago and put on the Ixia the Hombre record. And for this record, we had been playing it live with just a piano, just a vocal and a piano. And it goes over really well that way. And we had so many messages from people saying, where can I get a recorded version of the piano, the piano Gone Away? So we decided to take that on in the studio. And I'd say that was toughest because, I'm used to barking or whatever and having all these loud guitars behind me, and they kind of cover up your flaws or the imperfections in your vocal. But with this, it was like the vocal is really out there and there's nothing to cover it up. The piano's just accompanying it. And that was really, really strange at first, kind of hard to get used to it. And frankly, it was a little uncomfortable because I felt the vocal felt so much more vulnerable, I guess is the word, than what I'm used to singing. So it took a while to get it together. I think we spent, probably 2.5 days maybe on that song, just trying to get the vocal as good as we could. But once it finally fell into place, then I feel comfortable with it now. But it is kind of funny to think that, after all these years that actually, just singing with your voice could make you feel weird.
The fact that you got a little more vulnerable with this version, would you say like the whole meaning and idea of the song kind of had an even bigger impact because now you were actually listening to your vocals as opposed to the entire band as a whole?
Yeah, the arrangement makes you focus on the vocal more. It's just kind of the nature of it. And it's also so much more easy to hear the lyrics because you don't have all the guitars covering it up. So it kind of emphasizes the lyrics as well. And that's what that's the feedback we've been getting from playing it live.
Earlier, you mentioned that these like bits and pieces of recording of these sessions in between that you had of recording for this album helped you not to get burnt out. But during this time, you were also in the process of getting your PhD for molecular biology. So like, how do you focus and balance, the studies and also, working on a record during this time?
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, luckily I had flexibility. My work was mostly computer based. So I didn't necessarily have to be in the lab every single day. You definitely get more done probably if you go there. So it was just kind of juggling both. We'd obviously have to go out of town to tour for a while. Then we'd come back and I try to hit the school. So really between those two things, I think the recording was a little bit on the back burner there for a couple of years. It was just hard to get in the studio when I had to get this had to get my homework done. But I think it actually took me, I thought it would only take a couple of years, but it took 5 years for me to finish the PhD.
Congratulations with that. That's a feat in itself.
Well, thank you.
Now, lastly, to close us off, Noodles had also mentioned that you guys also wanted to make sure you had a label helping you guys, like backing the record once it released. So talk to me a little bit about the signing with Concord Records and why did you guys feel this label was perfect for this album and for the band?
Yeah, we had met with a couple labels and we weren't really in a hurry because we didn't have the record done. And all of a sudden we were getting close thinking, oh man, we don't have a record deal. I think, when we've been on labels before, we've always had pretty good luck at no one messed with us artistically. We could kind of do whatever we wanted. And so this time it was kind of the same thing, except maybe even more, because we didn't need a label to pay for it or whatever. We were just on our own making this record. We were going to deliver the finished product. So it was kind of just how we wanted it. I liked Concord because they feel like a small label, even though they're kind of a big label. And what I mean is, like, they've got, super legit departments. They've got a radio department and a streaming department and international and all that stuff that's important to a band like us, because we've been fortunate that we can go around the world and play shows in Europe and Japan, Australia, what have you. And so being able to serve those fans was important to us. And Concord, it feels homey and it feels kind of family-ish, but they've got the full muscle to pull all that off.
Well, congratulations with the signing. Congratulations with the new album, Let the Bad Times Roll. And thank you, Dexter, for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you very much. This was fun. I enjoyed speaking with you.